Okay, what's going on, everybody? We're here, we're live. I want to thank you all for joining me today. My apologies for being late. Thank you all for hanging in there with me, who've been hanging in there for the last 10 minutes. I'll spare you the boring details as to why I was late. But with that being said, if you can see and hear me clearly, please drop a one in the live chat. And while I'm waiting for the ones to come into the live chat, as usual, if you haven't already, please hit the like button because that is the most important thing that you can do for me on this channel. What that does is that it helps to make sure that those who are subscribed to the channel will indeed get their notifications. And it also helps to push this video through the YouTube algorithm, getting this video out to those who are interested in this type of content. Secondly, if you're new to the channel or if you've been ghost watching for quite some time now, please hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever I release a new video. And second to lastly, share this video out on your social media platforms to let everyone that I'm currently live. And it also helps push this video in the YouTube algorithm. And lastly, follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group. The link to my Telegram is in the description box below. It will also be pinned in the comment section after this stream is over. So let's get into today's show. I see the ones are coming in. This is going to be a fun one for me today, because I get to talk about Stephen A. Smith, and I get to talk about how, he kind of like got himself a little tripped up with the Democrats recently. I should have titled today's stream, When Being Honest Goes Wrong, right? Because not too long ago, sometime last week, all Stephen A. Smith did was give honest critique of the Democratic Party. He gave honest critique of how Eric Adams is handling the migrant crisis in New York. He gave honest critique just concerning Biden and how he has led to open borders and how all of this is negatively impacting, everybody in the country. He made reference to inflation and all these other kind of things. And he got in a lot of trouble for doing that and had to walk it all back for the most part. So that's what I want to get into today very quickly. So first, let's get into the very first video, right? That's what I want to do. I want to get into the very first video. And this, I'm not going to play the whole thing, right? It's going to be about maybe roughly 5 minutes of a 14-minute video, right? This is the initial video that got him in a little bit of hot water. So let's get into this very quickly, and then we're going to jump into the next clip afterward. And shout out to Saul for being the first person to contribute to today's stream. Thank you very much, Saul, for always coming through on this channel. It is deeply appreciated. I do not exist without you guys' support. So thank you very much. And shout out to Jaybird for 23 months of supporting the channel. I appreciate you for your 23 months of service, Jaybird. Thank you very much. I'm gonna keep it real with you guys real quick. I meant to say 23 months of service and then I lost it. Can you tell? I was like, for 23 months of supporting the channel. I meant to say of 23 months of service. Thank you, Jaybird. I appreciate you, bro. Now let's get into this Stephen A. Smith fumble. All right, let's dive into this right now.
To a show, a subject matter that's very, very important that I think is necessary before I get into the tweets and close out today's show. Ladies and gentlemen, Trump's going to get reelected. Donald Trump's going to be the next president of the United States. If this kind of stuff that I'm reading continues to happen in American cities, Donald Trump is a shoo-in for re-election.
So far, he hasn't said anything false.
Even if he's a convicted felon. Did you read the story coming out of New York City? Did you read it? Involving Mayor Adams, Eric Adams, who I'm a fan of, by the way. I like him. But I don't like the story that I read over the weekend. And I think it's a story that can't be ignored. And it's talking about how $53 million in prepaid credit cards are in the process of being distributed to migrant families. But illegal immigration has become incredibly pervasive since the Biden administration has taken office. We all know.
Ooh, he wasn't supposed to say that now, wasn't he? He wasn't supposed to say that. Mistake number one. he referred to migrants as illegal immigrants. That is mistake number one. You cannot refer to them as illegal immigrants when you are on the DNC payroll. You can't do that. You cannot refer to them as legal immigrants. You have to refer to them as migrants or asylum seekers. So, mistake number one. And mistake number two is that Stephen A. Smith clearly admitted that we can't ignore that since Biden got in office, borders have been busted wide open because of them. And now these illegal immigrants, as Stephen A. Smith calls them, right? Now they've been flooding into the country. So mistake number one and number two. I'm supposed to know better, Stephen. You're supposed to know better. You wind that back just a little bit.
Pervasive. Since the Biden administration has taken office, we all know that he's capitulated to the extreme left. And even though we wouldn't say specifically and definitively that the borders are open, every time you turn around, particularly in states like Texas and Arizona, and to a lesser degree, California, it is an extreme problem. Well, guess where else it's a problem? It's a problem in New York City, my home. And I got to tell you something right now. If it wasn't for my daughter being there, I'd be gone. Don't like what I'm seeing. But it's not just because of migrants or illegal immigration. It's because it's mayhem. Folks don't know how to act. It's not an accident that the former president keeps bringing up law and order, law and order, law and order, because those are catchwords.
Mistake number, what is that? I want to say mistake number three. Mistake number three. Mistake number one, referring to asylum seekers as legal immigrants. Mistake number two is admitting that this Biden crisis is indeed Biden's fault, the Biden crisis. Mistake number three, and this is pretty big, he just openly admitted that a Democratic, liberal-run city, New York City, is just completely upside down, and he doesn't want to live there. And if he could move somewhere else, he would. The only reason that he's living there still is because of his daughter. But he literally just admitted to you that New York is completely in shambles, not just because of migrants, right? Not just because of them, but because the city in and of itself is completely upside down. You just can't say stuff like that really ever when you're on the left side of the fence, right? But you really can't say stuff like that in the middle of a contentious election. You just can't do that. He's being a bad boy, Dwayne. He's being a very bad boy.
Those are the kind of things that make you go to the polls and vote out of fear. And it works. Throughout history, it has worked. But now this is a different kind of fear, but a fear tinged with frustration. Because when you hear about migrants receiving $53 million in prepaid credit cards, the Eric Adams administration in the mayor's office in New York City will tell you it's going to save about $600,000 a month. But that's not how poor people are looking at it. You know what black poor people are looking at it like? You know what Latinos who happen to be poor that arrived in this country are looking at it like? Where that money come from us? I could have used it. I could use the extra $500 a month. I could use the extra $1,000 a month. I could do that.
Mistake number four. And this is probably the biggest mistake that Stephen A. Smith made. He sat up there and sympathized and empathized with poor black and brown, as he stated, people, right? Telling the truth that by and large, the black community is looking at all this and saying, hey, wait a minute. This is all stuff that we can use. You haven't gone to this extent to take care of or repair or to even just put resources into our dilapidated communities in New York City. You haven't done anything to rehabilitate our hoods. You haven't done anything to put a cash infusion into programs, resources, or even community organized groups, right? that are in place to take care of the neighborhood, right? You haven't given them any funds to put in place the mechanisms needed for our community to flourish. Got homeless folks everywhere, folks on drugs everywhere, prostitution everywhere, and you haven't gone to this extent for us. Stephen A. Smith just echoed that sentiment. But the number one thing that made that such a huge mistake is that he echoed that sentiment, but he didn't make it a point to say, this is what they're thinking, this is what they're saying, but they're wrong. He didn't emphasize that you're wrong. And after emphasizing that they're wrong, you then reroute and reshift the blame to Republicans. You reroute and reshift that claim, that complaint to Greg Abbott. He didn't do that. That's something that Brandon Johnson does very well in Chicago. Even the mayor of Denver, I believe his name is Mike Johnston. You know, Mike Johnston, he literally blamed the migrant crisis, if I'm not mistaken, on Donald Trump. Donald Trump hasn't been president for like 3 years. How are you going to blame the migrant crisis on Donald Trump? How are you going to blame the borders being open and not being closed on Donald Trump? That doesn't make any sense. That was huge by not rerouting the blame to the Republicans, but instead sympathizing with the people. So now what that ends up doing when he does stuff like that, and when you're saying things like that, is that it leaves the door wide open for people like myself to come in and say and show, look, people like Stephen A. Smith, they get it. People like Stephen A. Smith knows exactly what's going on. He knows what's wrong. He knows who's to blame. And he understands that the way that this administration is going about everything is all wrong. He leaves the door open for that to be exploited. Because clearly you know the truth, yet you're often hesitant on stating the truth. And then you're still trying to convince people to vote for a man that not only caused this problem, but is ill-equipped to fix it because he won't do it. He doesn't want to, right? Leave that wide open. And what ultimately ended up happening, as I said, he left that door open. I'll pull this up on the screen right now. Is Breitbart got to that information, right? Breitbart got to this information and wrote an article about it. The article is titled, Watch, ESPN Stephen A. Smith furious at Biden, believes Trump on the verge of getting reelected. Now, mind you, I'm not playing the whole 14-minute clip of what I just showed you, but in that 14 minutes, what you just saw in the first maybe 3 or 4 minutes that I played, that's how the entirety of that clip went, of him giving honest critique of the Biden administration, of Eric Adams, and what's going on with the borders being wide open. And that was a no-no because that's what led to this. I'll just read very quickly just a brief summary of what they wrote in this article. I'm not going to read the whole thing because I want to jump back into the next article. So it reads off, ESPN sports commentator Stephen A. Smith may be a left-winger, but he does not seem to be on board with the Biden regime's open border policies. Clearly he's not, as we just heard. On his Tuesday podcast, he ripped the millions being spent on illegal aliens while natural-born Americans are left wanting. And that's literally what he did in that 14-minute clip. And also the link to these clips are in the description box below. If you want to watch these videos for yourself, minus my commentary, please do that if that's what you want to do. So that's what ended up happening. And because this article got written, and because a lot of people highlighted the fact that, hey, Stephen A. Smith literally just told the truth, that then led to this. Stephen A. Smith setting the record straight on my Donald Trump comments. Stephen A. Smith said, oh boy, looks like I got to set the record straight. I messed up big with this one. I really messed up. And now it's time for me to clean up my mess. And that's the video that I really want to dive into today, because there was so much BS being spewed in that video. There was so much BS being spewed in that video that I just have to unpack it. So let's unpack this video now. What is it titled? Stephen A. Smith setting the record straight on my Donald Trump comments. Let's get into that right now. There are 251 of you in the stream. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. That is extremely important for the growth of this channel. Hit the like button if you're finding today's information informative and slightly entertaining, because I do believe and feel that watching Stephen A. Smith fumble over his words, especially what we're getting ready to hear now, is definitely going to be entertaining. So let's jump into this right now. And once again, hit that like button if you haven't already.
I'm in Breitbart News, all right, because we want to give them some shine, right? I mean, we want to give them some pub, right? Breitbart News, that's their Twitter handle, had a caption: Stephen A. Smith is waking up big time. And it is a picture of Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, with his red tie, with his thumbs up. And that's what they're saying, that I'm getting it. I'm figuring it out, I guess. And then when you press onto the link, it highlights ESPN Stephen A. Smith furious at Biden, believes Trump is on the verge of getting reelected, as you can see with the caption that I had put up there. Look, y'all, I want to make sure that I'm clear. Donald Trump is not getting my vote. I also want to make this clear. It has nothing to do with liberalism or, conservatism. It has nothing to do with being a Republican or a Democrat, because I don't like either side particularly that much.
That's a lie. That's something that he's doing, the Charlemagne thing, where you pretend to be an independent when you're not. To be an independent is to be a swing voter. To be an independent means that you can go to any side of the spectrum. You may be on the left one election, you may be on the right. You may be voting Republican for whatever reason being for the next, 8 years because of whatever's going on, maybe because of this migrant crisis. You're leaning more toward the Republican side. You're leaning more towards conservatives, right? But then maybe 8 years later, to 12 years later, for whatever the reason being, you feel like, I'm gonna ride with the Democrats on this because of said particular issue. That's what it is to be an independent. Stephen A. Smith is not an independent, just like Charlemagne the God is not an independent. So when he's sitting there telling you that I don't particularly like either side, right? And tries to somewhat disassociate himself with being on the left and being a Democrat, which he is, that's game. That's game. It just simply isn't true. But let's carry on.
It has everything to do with what I believe the leadership of this position, of the leadership of the free world, should entail. I believe the presidency of the United States is a statesmanship position. You should be about galvanizing and bringing folks together. And I firmly believe that Donald Trump being the next president of the United States would cause civil war in this country.
There we go with the fear mongering. You gotta love the fear mongering. He had to make sure to clean up his mess, so much so to the degree that he would exaggerate the election of Donald Trump to where he states that he believes if Donald Trump becomes president, he's going to cause a civil war. Now, we all know that's not going to happen. There's not going to be any civil war happening in this country. As a matter of fact, I charge you, Stephen A. Smith, with being a conspiracy theorist, because that sounds like right-wing conspiracy theory talking points, if you ask me. There's going to be a civil war. There's not going to be a civil war. You're crazy. That's just not going to happen, right? But that's the level of fear-mongering that he's going to, saying that if Donald Trump gets in office, he fears it's going to cause a civil war. How ridiculous is that? Anyways, I don't want to belabor that point. I don't want to belabor that point, but that is completely crazy.
That's my fear. And I stand by that. It's a fear. It's not a fact, but it is a fear.
You sound crazy. He sounds completely insane. Donald Trump being elected will cause a civil war. That's his fear, grown man. His fear that Donald Trump is going to cause a civil war. I don't believe anything that he's saying right now, honestly. I don't believe that at all, but he had to go to some sort of extreme to clean up the mess of having the audacity. How dare you actually hold Joe Biden accountable? How dare you hold the Democrats accountable? With the position that you have over there at ESPN, what as big as your voice is, are you crazy? Don't you ever hold the Democrats accountable. This man is out of his mind.
Having said all of that, the reason why this is relevant is because of why Breitbart News felt the need to bring me up. because it talked about first ESPN sports commentator Stephen A. Smith. Maybe a left winger. False. I'm far from a left winger.
Stop it. I apologize. I shouldn't have cut it off so early. Just let me rewind that back just a little bit. Come on, man.
The reason why this is relevant is because of why Breitbart News felt the need to bring me up. Because it talked about first ESPN sports commentator Stephen A. Smith. Maybe a left winger. False. I'm far from a left winger. I have conservative principles, like a fiscal conservative, me paying taxes. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. That is a lie. Gay rights, sure. You know what I'm saying? Pro-choice, okay. No, actually, I don't believe in separating children from their parents, whether they're legal or illegal immigrants. Absolutely true. That doesn't make me a left winger. Nevertheless, I want to get.
Let me. When it comes to all this fake independent talk, you know, so he's not a liberal or on the left because he's a fiscal conservative, but I do believe in certain things concerning, you know, liberalism and the Democratic Party. Let me tell you how you put all that to bed, right? How you put that to bed is this: when you come to like fake independence, like Charlemagne the God and Stephen A. Smith, when they start talking that fake independent talk, ask them this very simple question: who's the last Republican candidate that you publicly endorsed for either President of the United States, House of Representatives, or the U.S. Senate? That's the only question you have to ask them. And you could have ask them a follow-up question. Clearly, you're stating you're not going to support Donald Trump. Okay, that's fine. You support Nikki Haley? Oh, okay, you're not doing that. Okay, what Republicans are you supporting that you would like to announce publicly that will be running for House of Representatives or, once again, U.S. Senate? Watch how quiet it gets when you present that question to a fake independent. They get quiet real fast. Because Stephen A. Smith, just like Charlemagne the God, no matter what they say, even when they give these half-hearted fake critiques, these, you know, these non-genuine critiques of Biden and the Democrats, all roads always lead back to the Democratic Party. It never matters what they say. What they say is irrelevant, because at the end of the day, all roads lead back to the Democrats. And you're seeing this right here and right now with Stephen A. Smith. Yet he's trying to convince you, just like Charlemagne and a lot of other Black celebrities, they try so hard to convince you that they're independents. But once again, go back to that question that I asked you, that I said to ask them. Next time you see a fake independent, and to be more specific, next time you see a fake Black independent, right? To be more specific, next time you see one of them, ask them that very simple question: who was the last Republican candidate that you publicly endorsed to be either President of the United States, to be in the House of Representatives, or to be in the U.S. Senate? Who? And watch how quiet it gets. They will become as quiet as a mouse. They won't have an answer for you because they're fake independents. It's not real.
Get that out the way.
Also, there are 333 of you all on the stream right now. Please hit the like button if you haven't already. That is extremely important. I appreciate that.
But my first question to Breitbart News is why I got to be ESPN commentator. This is Stephen A. Smith show. This don't have a thing to do with ESPN or Disney. This is me.
You see what really happened. Outside of the fact that he needed to clean that up with the Democrats, his employers, ESPN/Disney, got on that behind. They said, hey, you work for us. And even though you're on your own show, the Stephen A. Smith show, you still represent us. And the stuff that you're saying on there is reflecting against us. So you get back out there. And when you do your show tomorrow, you set the record straight, as was the title of this video that he put out, Setting the Record Straight. You set the record straight on who you actually support for president, and that the foolishness coming out of your mouth has nothing to do with us. They have a tight leash on him. I can't even imagine being a grown man like that, having a leash around my neck the way that he does. They have a tight leash around Stephen A. Smith's neck. And it's really sad, honestly. It's quite sad to see a grown man have a leash around his neck like that, and we're talking about the company he works for, not his wife.
Talking about this situation. And what situation am I alluding to that raised your antennas? It was when I addressed the open border policies to some degree by highlighting what Mayor Eric Adams of New York had elected to do when they were talking about coming up with $53 million in prepaid credit cards that they were going to give to migrants. Ladies and gentlemen, that's
Notice how they're migrants now. In the first video, they were illegal immigrants. Now he got it right, because remember, he's setting the record straight. Now they're migrants. Get it right. Get it right, Stephen A.
It's not about open borders. I understand you allude to it to some degree, but that wasn't my focus. My focus is there's Black homeless people in the streets of New York City who are American.
Let me rewind that back just a little bit, because this is actually really interesting what he's going to talk about, and then how I'm going to explain this. Oh, jeez, I hate when I do that.
About coming up with $53 million to some degree by highlighting what Mayor Eric Adams of New York show. This don't have a thing to do with ESPN or Disney. This is me talking about this situation. And what situation am I alluding to that raised your antennas? It was when I addressed the open border policies to some degree by highlighting what Mayor Eric Adams of New York had elected to do when they were talking about coming up with $53 million in prepaid credit cards that they were going to give to migrants. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not about open borders. I understand you allude to it to some degree, but that wasn't my focus. My focus is there's Black homeless people in the streets of New York City who are American citizens. There's white homeless people in the streets of America who are American citizens. There are Hispanic individuals and beyond who are homeless in the United States of America, who are American citizens. What about them? That was the only point that I was making.
No, you were making a lot more points than that, but carry on, Stephen A. Like I said, if you want to hear all the points that he made in the original video, it's 14 minutes long. The link is in the description box below. You made a lot more points than that, and you did a good job in that first video. So it's unfortunate that they made you have to walk it all back.
Nothing more, nothing less. So if you're going to quote me accurately and contextualize it properly.
Stop. He said, if you're going to quote me actually or factually, I think he said, and contextualize it properly. Watch this. Let me show you something, okay? And there are 360 of you in the stream right now. Please hit that like button if you haven't already. That is extremely important. Let me see if I can pull this up very quickly. All right. Hopefully I can. If I can't, I'm going to be extremely disappointed. But I think I might be able to. That would be ridiculous if I couldn't. And of course, I don't have this queued up. So give me just a second while I pull this up, what I want to show you very quickly. Okay. And we're almost there. We're almost there. Okay. You should be able to see this now. Okay, so you see this in front of you right now? This should be on your screen right now. On your screen right now, I made it a point, right, to do this, is that I copy pasted the entire article, which you see on your right, or I guess maybe it's on your left if you're watching this, right? It's on your left, but I copy paste the entire article in Microsoft Word, just to get a word count of how many words were in this article, right? Remember, he said, quote me, contextually and accurately, right? So this is the article here that you see with the quotes highlighted in it, right? On my right and your left. And when I was looking at the article, I was thinking to myself, like half of this article is most likely quoting Stephen A. Smith. They appear to be pretty accurate. So I know this is like really tedious, but I just had to show this. I had to do it. So I don't know if you can see that at the bottom. Maybe you can zoom in, maybe you can't. But I'll just show it to you and I'll tell it to you. In that original Breitbart article, that article consisted of 925 words. 925 words. Out of 925 words, on the left, where you can see here on my right, I took all the quotes out, and out of 925 words, 528 were quotes of Stephen A. Smith. So when you're talking about quote me accurately and contextually, over half the article was Stephen A. Smith quotes. Over half the article was Stephen A. Smith quotes. So I think they did a pretty good and accurate job of getting your words out there and what you really meant, because half the article were your words, not the words of the Breitbart author, right? And there goes once again, there goes the problem. Stephen A. Smith, his words of honesty got him in trouble. That's what got him in trouble, were his words of honesty and his honest critique of the Biden administration and the Democrats overall.
We have a border issue, sure.
So now let's get back into the video, and we're going to round this thing out. There's probably about maybe 2 or 3 minutes left in the video. So let's get back into it. There are 399 of you all on the stream right now. Please hit the like button if you haven't already.
So if you're going to quote me accurately and contextualize it properly.
They did. Over half the article were your words, but carry on.
Do we have a border issue? Sure. There is no doubt about that. But I'm not somebody on here that just wants to point the finger at Joe Biden and the liberals and all the things that they do wrong. I'm quite sure I've recognized the fact that the stock market is hitting a record high. Unemployment is at a record low. I think the number was like 14 million new jobs.
This man is literally campaigning for the Biden administration now. Let me rewind this just a little bit. I didn't want to say it before it started. This is sad. This is sad. It is so against the rules for him to actually give honest critique of the Biden administration and the Democrats overall, that not only did he have to resort to extreme fear mongering by saying the most ridiculous fear that apparently he has, that if Trump gets elected, he will cause a civil war. But the leash around his neck is so tight that he even begins campaigning for Biden in the middle of this video. Look at this. This is crazy.
I'm quite sure I've recognized the fact that the stock market is hitting a record high. Unemployment is at a record low. I think the number was like 14 million new jobs that had been created or what have you. I'm reading here from some of my notes. President Biden gave Medicaid the power to directly negotiate with Big Pharma to lower prices and cap the cost of insulin for medical beneficiaries at $35. Gas prices. The United States is now producing more oil than any country in history. Yes, more than Russia or even Saudi Arabia. And that's one of the reasons gas prices are now lower in inflation-adjusted prices than in 1974.
The reason he's talking about inflation and gas prices and stuff like that right now, and why he's campaigning so hard for Biden the way that he is because in the original video, he was going in on inflation. He was talking about how much bread costs, how much milk costs, how much eggs costs, how much gas costs, so now they were like, you better get back on your show and campaign for Biden and list off all of his accomplishments. Look at this. This is wild. Wow, the leash is tight around his neck. That is crazy.
So I get all of that. I'm aware of the fact that some could argue that President Biden has done a great job. I'm just talking about going to the supermarket and paying for some milk. I'm just going to buying a box of cereal or going to the gas tank, and you could say it's low or whatever, but how much is it really costing you compared to what you're making? I won't get into all of that. I'm just making a point that you can make arguments on behalf of Joe Biden. My argument against Joe Biden is not about his presidency now. It's about 4 more years of him when he's going to be 82 years old at the time of the election. That's all. Stop making things up. My words to Breitbart News exactly. I'm not hard to find. I'm right here. All I ask is that you contextualize my quotes accurately and address that. Stop throwing ESPN into it because that's my day job talking sports. They don't have anything to do with the Stephen A. Smith show. This is owned and operated by me.
ESPN was not happy. He has to keep reiterating, this is not ESPN. This is the Stephen A. Smith show. This is the Stephen A. Smith show. It has nothing to do with ESPN. ESPN said, you better get out there and fix this because you're making us look bad. Isn't Stephen A. Smith making he's making a lot of money. He's like, what, $50 million, maybe $100 million, something like that. ESPN is paying him well. So, I mean, I get it. I get it. When they say jump, you say how high, and that's what we see here, right? And what we also see here as well is that he keeps going back to, you're misrepresenting what I said, and you're not contextualizing it. You're lying on me. This once again, and like he said, he tried to say that he's not a liberal. Remember, he reiterated that maybe 2 times. I'm not a liberal. I'm not a leftist. I'm not a Democrat. But he's falling back into the typical liberal left Democratic Party playbook, is by when you don't like what someone is saying, you cast it as disinformation. You cast it as misinformation. You're misquoting me. You're lying. You're not contextualizing it properly. Literally over half of the article was his words. They were his words, yet they're not contextualizing it. That just simply isn't true. But he's doing the typical leftist liberal thing. Disinformation, misinformation. You're spreading falsehoods. No, it's not true. They actually told the truth concerning what you said. And that was the problem. Stephen A. Smith told the truth. And the truth got him in trouble. And that's what has him where he is now, making this video that I played for you, where he sat here jumping through all types of hoops and hurdles and groveling and letting you know this has nothing to do with ESPN. This has nothing to do with ESPN. This has nothing to do with ESPN. That man is scared of losing his position. He's scared of losing his job. He's scared of losing his political connects. He's scared of losing everything behind telling the truth. That was all he did. All he did was tell the truth. And ultimately, it got him in trouble so much to the point where he had to walk it all back. Sad thing to see. Sad to see a brother that got a leash around his neck as tight as he does. And with all that being said, that's going to do it for today's stream. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. This was a fun one. Tomorrow's stream is going to be a little bit more of a serious one, right? So until tomorrow's stream, please make sure you hit that like button on the way out if you haven't already. Share this video out on your social media platforms and subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel and you like what you're hearing here, because I guarantee you will like more of what's to come. And also, this stream right now is going to redirect you to tomorrow's pre-recorded video of the playlist that I call Today's News. So stick around. You're going to be rerouted to that video. When you get rerouted to that video, you all know I'm thirsty for likes. When you get there, hit the like button. So I'll catch you guys tomorrow evening. Until then, have a great evening and a safe one. Peace.